Good morning. My name is Claire Fussell from Operation Noah. I'm the campaign director here. Really good to see you all. I say good morning, but actually it's afternoon, isn't it? 1 o'clock. And it might be different times for some of you in different places around the world. So great to see you and thank you for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be introducing the second in our webinar series, exploring the new toolkit, Catholic Social Teaching and Investing in Climate Solutions. Last month, we looked at the first 2 chapters of that toolkit, and today we're going to be looking at the second 2 chapters. And we're also really excited to be hearing from Arjen Overveel, who's joining us from Credit International. And he's going to be talking to us about the social impact investment that they offer around the world, and particular examples of how churches might get involved in impact investing. Then we will hear also from Bakani Shitsu, who is the campaign officer here at Operation Noah, and she's going to be speaking through the toolkit and giving an introduction to a couple of the chapters, and there'll be a chance for us to discuss some of those as well. And before we get started, I'd like to open us with a prayer. And this prayer is taken from the toolkit itself, and it's from a Climate Sunday prayer. So let's pray. Dear Lord, we belong to you. All that we are and have is yours. Help us to safeguard all that you have given into our care. Pour out the power of your love, that we may protect all that is vulnerable. Mother Earth and all her creatures, send your Holy Spirit to those of us who have been given the responsibility over money and resources. Help us to invest wisely in all that nourishes and protects, harming no one. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. I'd like to hand over now to Bakani.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everybody, for attending this afternoon. I know there's some familiar faces, and so hopefully we won't need to go into too much detail back about the toolkit, but for those who are new, I will give a brief introduction as well. And it's important that we start the conversation really with the scientific context and recognizing that many have been giving this warning, and in particular the International Panel on Climate Change, about those severe and irreversible impacts that are taking place around the world already, and that really urges into urgent action. We're already seeing devastating floods and fires and droughts and rising temperatures globally. These wide impacts of the climate catastrophe make the application of the principles of Catholic social teaching ever more urgent. This isn't a future problem, it's something that is happening very much at this time. And crucially, the impacts are not felt equally, and the poor and vulnerable communities, most of whom have done the least to contribute to this problem, are suffering the most from it. And this is a profound injustice that violates both our sense of human dignity and also violates our principle for prioritizing care of the poor. All of these things are deeply interconnected. And so when we start to think about, well, what are some of the solutions that we can look into and that we can support? And it's really a prophetic action that we can take alongside all the other actions that we're taking within our churches to transition away from fossil fuels into clean energy. And by investing in climate solutions, the church can equally act prophetically and use its voice to amplify the urgency and the sense that something can be done. We recognize as Operation Noah that we are both science-informed, but also hope inspired, and part of that hope comes from our actions. So the toolkit that we developed is very much linking this direct correlation between the investments we make and the kind of world we contribute to shaping. And it's designed for financial directors, treasurers, trustees, and committee members within Catholic dioceses, organizations, congregations, and religious orders. It aims to align investment strategies with the principles of CST. The toolkit and all the webinar series around the toolkit are intended to provide general guidance and educational information and do not constitute or intend to constitute investment advice or any investment service. And one of what we really advocate for and recommend is that you use this toolkit alongside investment professionals that you are working with. And so the structure of the toolkit is these 7 chapters focusing on core pillars of Catholic social teaching and its relevance specifically to the climate crisis. Each chapter uses the See, Judge, Act framework, which is deeply rooted in the tradition of Catholic social teaching, to explore how investors might discern their impact. And so today, as Claire mentioned, we're looking at chapters 3 and 4, and starting with this principle of a preferential option for the poor. Climate change disproportionately impacts the poor, exacerbating existing inequalities. And the psalm reminds us of God's attentiveness to the poor. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. We are called to serve the poor as Christ's hands and feet on earth, and fulfilling the psalm's prayer. The Catholic Church teaches that those who are oppressed by poverty are those who are oppressed by poverty are the object of a preferential love on the part of the Church. This principle of the preferential option for the poor does not ask that we focus on the poor to the exclusion of others, but rather that we are called to prioritize those who are most in need. In his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis writes, "For the Church, the option for the poor is primarily a theological category rather than a cultural, sociological, political, or philosophical one. God shows the poor his first mercy." And so in the toolkit, we recommend activities to put these principles into action. And while traditional investment decisions often leverage reports, charts, or statistics, we advocate for a more holistic perspective. In this toolkit, we advocate for integrating diverse sources of evidence, such as documentaries, humanitarian reports, and direct engagement with communities, through which we can gain a richer understanding of these complex and intricate issues. This approach is particularly intuitive for many Catholics, especially those in religious orders and dioceses, whose vocations and whose work and charism often foster profound connections and insights into the lives of communities, notably the poorest, who depend on vital services like food banks and international schools. So I have an example for you this afternoon, which is taken from the toolkit as an example of this more holistic way of looking.
For me, addressing climate change is, how are we going to protect the most vulnerable? We have the moral responsibility to do everything to put us on track to a maximum temperature of 1.5.
Life is very challenging here. It hasn't rained for 6 months, and I don't know when it will rain next.
For many people around the world, the impact of climate change is devastating. In the north of Ethiopia, they used to expect rain up to 4 months a year, but now it rarely comes. People don't have enough water to survive.
We have no food and are dependent on our livestock for our livelihood. Whenever there is no rainfall, our animals die as there is no grass or water. When it rains, I only need to walk 5 minutes to collect water, but these water sources are now dry. Every night, I walk for 10 hours to collect water from a lake. The length of the dry season is increasing. I worry about my children and my family. I feel worried whenever I think about the future.
We are on course for global temperature rises that will put millions of lives at risk as extreme weather events such as droughts become more frequent. And it's the poorest who are hit the hardest. But we are at a turning point. Decisions are being made now about how we build back from coronavirus that will shape our economy, society, and climate for decades to come. As Christians, we have a vital role as we pray, speak out for change, and love our neighbours across the world through how we live. You can help turn the tide on climate change and build a better world for us all, including people like Orbisa.
We have a huge potential that has not been unleashed yet. We are facing a world that is forever changed, but that we have the capacity to build much better living conditions for our children, their children, and their children, if we only set our mind to it.
Thanks. So in that video, it's more of an advocacy call, but I feel that it brings together the stories of how we are impacting each other and some clear actions that we can take. For a while, Operation Noah has worked on investments and also supported other campaigns, including political campaigns for change as well. So in the toolkit, we provide a section called the judge section. I might prefer discernment. And we provide questions you may wish to use as you engage as with your finance committee and also with your financial advisors and portfolio managers. For example, how can you ensure that our investments are not exacerbating existing inequalities and contributing to the displacement or exploitation of vulnerable populations due to the climate crisis? It's a huge question in and of itself. It could take up a whole meeting, but we hope that it will encourage a deeper discernment into thinking more actively about the choices that we're making with the resources that we're responsible for. We also provide some practical steps you can take to transform and sustainably manage investments. So for example, thinking about how you can prioritize low-cost, accessible energy and water for the poorest in society, and especially in regions that are threatened by climate change. These will no doubt challenge investment managers, but that's part of the hope that in order to see this transition and to be part of it, it needs to be supported. And that does mean stepping out of our comfort zone and really pushing the people that we are working with to create a better world. I'll take a pause at this time in case there are any questions or comments people might like to make. Move on to chapter 4, which looks at solidarity and the common good. And in this section, we look at solidarity, which is a cornerstone of Catholic social teaching, and it makes us aware that we are deeply concerned and deeply connected to one another, and it calls us to work together for the common good. As we've discussed, the climate crisis is a global challenge that demands a united response that transcends borders and divisions. And as a global church, we are united with our brothers and sisters across the world, and for many religious orders and congregations, they have chapters in other countries and often those most affected by the climate crisis. And so as investors, this means taking a hard look at the impacts of financial decisions on communities and the environment. Investments can prioritize initiatives that uplift the vulnerable and combat inequality and promote just transitions to renewable energy and sustainable practices. Special attention needs to be shown to the rights of communities affected by business operations, such as those facing forced displacement or the desecration of ancestral lands due to resource extraction. And as Pope Francis emphasized in Laudato Si, everything is connected. Therefore, we are responsible for one another and our collective response to the climate crisis. In his address to the World Meeting of Popular Movements, Pope Francis reminded us that solidarity is to think and to act in terms of community, of the priority of the life of all over the appropriation of goods by a few. It is to fight against the structural causes of poverty, inequality, and lack of work, land, and housing, the denial of social and labor rights, and all those realities that many of us suffer, that we are all called to transform. And so again, in this chapter, we look at that history of what has the church said about solidarity and the common good, which I've given us a brief summary of there. And then we look at examples of different resources that we can look at. For example, in this case, there's a really great report by CAFOD, which looked at climate change, migration, and human trafficking. Again, encouraging us to think about the wider impacts, not just what are the impacts on the bottom line, important as they are. In the judge section, we provide more questions that you can use to engage with your committee. And once again, we're applying those directly to the climate crisis. So for example, asking what processes do you use to incorporate the perspectives of marginalized communities and climate-related investment decisions? Again, this will challenge many in the finance sector because it is not the way that we've traditionally organized that information. And hopefully it will encourage us to think more about the sources of our knowledge and how we can use them to make better decisions. And again, we recommend some actions that can be taken. So for example, developing a due diligence framework to assess how companies are providing low cost access, that should say, for the poorest communities and redistributing profits. So again, encouraging things like cooperative business models that are fairer and more inclusive. So again, I am happy to take a few minutes for any questions or comments, thoughts on those two sections that you might have.
And I think, Bakani, this was the time that we were envisaging people might go into some breakout rooms for to think about a couple of the questions that have come in. So thank you so much, Bakani, for giving us an introduction to those two chapters of the wider toolkit. It's really helpful to see how they're structured. And now we have some time to meet each other and discuss some of those questions that have been raised. Firstly, what connection do we see between some of these pillars of Catholic social teaching, particularly the preferential option for the poor and solidarity and the common good, and how they connect with the climate crisis? And it would be good also to hear from you whether you've raised the question of climate change when it comes to financial decision making in your church or your faith institution, and what sort of conversations have you had already? So we'll have a few minutes in groups to briefly think about those two questions. It will only be scratching the surface because we'll only have 5 minutes or so, but you'll have an invitation to go into a breakout room now, and the questions will be shared. I'll hand over now to Aryan, who will speak a little bit about some of the opportunities that Oikocredit provide to have social impact with your investments. So over to you, Aryan.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Hello, good day. My name is Arjen Overwiel. I'm Relationship Manager for Oikocredit's members and investors. And greetings from Amersfoort in the Netherlands, where Oikocredit International has its headquarters. Really good to see you, and also to hear some reflections already in the breakout room. And thank you, Claire and Bukani, for the invitation to speak here. I have a background in development economics. I worked in the Dutch financial sector for about 10 years before I joined Oikocredit 3.5 years ago now. And I could really talk for hours about Oikocredit, but I'll restrain myself to the allocated 15 minutes and the topic of justice and solidarity and prioritizing the poor and climate solutions. And in the first part of the presentation, it's a bit of an introduction to Oikocredit. And the second part will focus really on very concrete examples of how we can serve the poor in the face of climate change challenges. And I hope it will be an inspiring presentation. So for those of you who don't know Oikocredit yet, we are a cooperative and a social impact investor. And we aim to create positive social impact, and if all goes well, a financial return. So on this picture, you see Clara from Guatemala, and she took out her first microloan 15 years ago from Oikocredit's partner Genesis. And since then, she took out several loans, started and grew 3 businesses, and generated income for herself and created employment for others. So this is a very concrete example of the positive social impact that Oikocredit seeks to create. Oikocredit was born from the ecumenical movement and was founded by the World Council of Churches in 1975, almost 50 years ago. And the idea was then to provide churches with an ethical investment alternative and to channel investment capital from the global north to global south, and really with the purpose to strengthen the poor and needy communities by enabling them to improve their own livelihoods. And in doing so, Oikocredit provides an alternative means for the use of investment capital, running counter to the widely accepted practice that such capital should be used only for the maximum financial return. And this quote is from Oikocredit's annual report 1980, but our mission and vision haven't changed that much since then. So basically, it's all about challenging people and organizations to invest responsibly, and then using that money to enable people to build a life of dignity. And I believe that resonates very well with the social teaching of the church, as also this quote from Laudato Si illustrates. And work is necessity, part of the meaning of life on this earth. It's a path to growth and human development and personal fulfillment. And helping the poor financially must always be a provisional solution in the face of pressing needs. The broader objective should always be to allow them a dignified life through work. And let me quote the late Pope Francis again and emphasize one of Oikocredit's core values, which is solidarity. The more fortunate should renounce some of their rights so as to place their goods more generously at the service of others. To speak properly of our own rights, we need to broaden our perspective and to hear the plea of other peoples in other regions than those of our own country. We need to grow in a solidarity which would allow all peoples to become the artisans of their destiny, since every person is called to self-fulfillment. And I really hope that this presentation gives you some ideas on how to make some of your financial decisions acts of worldwide solidarity, and that's so much needed these days. Before jumping into the concrete examples, I just want to give you a bit of context on how Oikocredit works. So Oikocredit raises about €1 billion of capital from 46,000 investors, both individuals and organizations, and among those organizations are many churches and church-related organizations and religious orders. And Oikocredit offers loans, equity investments, and support to its partners, to local partners like Genesis in Guatemala. And then the end beneficiaries like Clara from the example I shared previously. The end beneficiaries are people or communities with low incomes. And if all goes well, the end clients are able to repay the loans to the partners of Oikocredit, and then the partners can repay the loan to Oikocredit. And then Oikocredit aims to pay a fair dividend, a very modest dividend of around 2%. But it's really about the social impact first, and the financial return comes second. Took Oikocredit about 3 years from its origination in 1975 to the first distribution of loans in 1978, which were both related to social housing initiatives in Ecuador and India. And this slide gives you a snapshot of where the development financing portfolio is today. It's at around 1.1 billion euros, which is about 920 million British pounds. And the portfolio is spread across 50 countries. Our main focus sector is financial inclusion. So that's really about giving people access to credit and other financial services. Then it's about agriculture. So for example, we finance fair trade cacao cooperatives. And our third focus sector is renewable energy, which is relatively small, but in total it's still 66 million euros worth of loans and equity. So I'll focus on renewable energy in the remainder of this presentation. While most of our portfolio is located in Latin America and the Caribbean, the vast majority of the renewable energy portfolio is located in Africa. And our current renewable energy, or RE, exposure is close to 70 million euros, spread over 30 partners. And it's our ambition to grow that portfolio to 150 million euros in the next couple of years. And this part of Oikocredit's portfolio is closely related to Sustainable Development Goal number 7 on affordable and clean energy. And the challenge for this Sustainable Development Goal is still huge. According to the United Nations, international financial flows for clean energy in developing countries remain insufficient. At the current rate, 660 million people will still lack electricity, and 1.8 billion will not have access to clean cooking by 2030. So that's a huge challenge. Within renewable energy, at Oikocredit, we have 4 focus areas, which we'll explore in a bit more detail on the next slides. It's all about energy access, greening the grids, clean cooking, and predictive use of renewable energy, or PURE for short. So I'll just give you a couple of examples for each of these focus sector within renewable energy. So Oikocredit's partners in the field of energy access provide their clients with smart solutions. That this can take the form of solar home systems, or solar lanterns, larger solar kits for entrepreneurs, or mini grids that give entire villages access to energy, even when they are not tied to the national energy grid. Now, this obviously has a positive climate impact because it reduces fossil fuel consumption, but it also has great social gains, as access to energy can really change lives. For example, there are educational gains because lighting allows children to study after dark, and schools have opportunities to improve their teaching methods. It also promotes economic development because energy access can support businesses and job creation and productivity, and also many times it's more results in cost saving for businesses because it's a less expensive alternative. And in a way, it also promotes gender equality, first because less time is spent on collecting low efficiency fuels, which is a task typically carried out by women in the countries where Oikocredit is active. And second, because solar home systems enable women to run home-based businesses. One concrete example is ARC Power. Pictured are site engineer Adeline in the center and power field officers Kevin and Louise. And ARC Power launched in Rwanda with solar-powered mini-grids, such as the one pictured, and connecting successfully over 10,000 people to a clean energy source. And when the Rwandan government introduced its national energy plan in 2024 to accelerate nationwide energy access, ARC Power adapted its mini-grid model, launching a new business model called Strategic Power Partnership. And this approach really allows the company to collaborate with the government to build grids, energy plans, and distribution networks on a larger scale. So it was initially implemented in one of Rwanda's districts, but now this model is being expanded to Zambia and Mozambique, giving more and more people access to clean energy. Second part of our renewable energy portfolio focuses on grid-side solutions, which are small-scale infrastructure projects, for example, wind or solar, where energy generated is fed into the national grid. And this really helps to improve the energy generation mix with a greater share coming from renewables. And this part of our portfolio also includes commercial industrial solar installations that generate power directly for companies. And this has several benefits. So in the countries where oil credit is active, the national energy grid is not always as reliable as we are maybe used to in the UK or the Netherlands. So having a direct source of energy really reduces the impact of grid fallouts, and it makes business planning a lot easier. And also it creates jobs in construction and maintenance and supply chains, which are often local, which is also good for the economy, of course. And some projects also include community development, like benefit sharing, local investment, or grid expansion to rural areas. And there are also health benefits, of course, to more renewable energy because it reduces air pollution from coal and diesel plants, which could lead to respiratory issues. Here's an example of Central University College Tema in Ghana. This university has 2 grounded solar installations to power the student halls of residences, and also to power the administration offices and lecture rooms. And the university chose for this option because it's environmentally friendly and cheaper than electricity from the grid. Plus, it's a more sustainable and reliable source of electricity compared to the electricity grid in Ghana. And the university pays for the installation by paying their installments to credit partner Ecoligo. And Ecoligo provides the monitoring, maintenance, and repairs to the installations. Benefiting the university and the students and the teachers. Then the third part of our renewable energy portfolio focuses on clean cooking. So we work with partners that provide alternatives to traditional cooking fuels. A cook stove requires some sort of fuel like wood or charcoal, and rural customers often cannot afford to buy fuel for their daily thermal energy needs. So they need to work with charcoal or kerosene or other fossil fuels. So clean cooking solutions really help to replace traditional fuels, and that reduces emissions, of course. It slows deforestation because people need less wood and less charcoal. So this really helps to preserve forests and biodiversity. And also it improves the air quality both indoors and outdoors, which is also great for people's health, of course. Then quickly onto an example. Here you see Solange. She's a 34-year-old mother of 3, and she lives with her husband. She balances her livelihood between farming and running a sewing business, and she's a client of also of ARC Power, which I mentioned previously. So prior to having electricity, her family relied on candles for lighting, which presented significant limitations and challenges. And the introduction of electricity has really brought multiple benefits to Solange's households. So that includes cooking with electricity, phone charging, reliable lighting throughout their home. And it really makes a difference, she says. Perhaps most significantly, the power connection has extended her productive working hours for her sewing business, which she does from home. She says, I used to work until 6 and then it would be dark, but now I can work until 10. So this illustrates nicely both the impact of gaining access to electricity, but also obviously to clean cooking devices, which can be powered with electricity rather than with charcoal or wood. The fourth and last sector within Oikocredit's renewable energy portfolio is productive use of renewable energy, or PURE. It can take form of productive hubs called storage solutions, solar-powered irrigation, but also e-mobility. Perhaps it's best illustrated by a concrete example. So here you see one of Oikocredit's end clients in India, which is a client of Ecozen, and Ecozen is an Oikocredit partner that offers Ecotron, which is a solar water pump. And it also offers EcoFrost, which is a portable solar-powered cold room. And that's based on thermal energy storage, which can maintain low temperatures even without any backup power. So EcoZen supports rural farmers living in off-grid areas by enabling them to reduce post-harvest losses of their perishable goods due to poor storage. So here on the picture, you see a smallholder farmer Molly Bende, and his strawberries are ready to be sold to wholesalers. And because of EcoFrost, he is able to increase his turnover by 30 to 40% even because of improved product quality and the possibility, to store the fruit longer and just keep a better quality. So that brings me to the end of a quick overview of EcoCredit's renewable energy portfolio. It also brings me to the close of my presentation. I understood that the slides of this webinar will be distributed after the presentation. So the slides also contain my contact details. So please feel free to reach out to me if you want to have a chat one-on-one about EcoCredit and about how we may help you. I hope the presentation has provided you with some insights and some inspiration on how we can prioritize the poor in climate solutions, which is indeed a matter of justice and solidarity. And that is also illustrated by this last quote from Evangelii Gaudium, which really sums it up. And I hope it really encourages you to act on the topic of today's webinar. And so it says, the church hears the cry for justice and intends to respond to it with all her might. And in this context, we can understand Jesus' command to his disciples, you yourselves give them something to eat. It means working to eliminate the structural causes of poverty and to promote the integral development of the poor, as well as small daily acts of solidarity in meeting the real needs which we encounter. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions or comments that you have now. And I'll stop sharing my screen now and hand it over to Claire or Kani.
Thanks so much, Aaron, and really appreciate learning a bit more about all the different ways in which EcoCredit is supporting people globally.
Sure, thank you, Bakani. So the Green Investment Declaration is an initiative for churches and any religious institution that holds investments to move their money more into climate solutions. And so it's really a way in which you can sort of declare that you are putting your money into climate solutions and supporting some of the sorts of projects that Ian was introducing earlier. But also then speaking up about it to encourage others to do the same. We recognise that we need a huge amount of investment, both public and private, into the green transition, and we need it urgently. And churches have a really strong moral voice on this. And I think that if churches speak up, others listen. Often we find that churches' divestment announcements made it into the national press, and a lot of other church policy changes wouldn't make it into the national press. I think that there's a lot of focus and interest in what churches say and do with their money, and this is one way in which we can, as churches and faith institutions, use our voice to advocate for much more public and private investment in this area. So the investment was launched last year. The declaration was launched last year, and it's in partnership with the Just Money movement, which is another UK-based charity that works with churches around their finances. And you don't need to have started doing this work already to sign up to it. It's about having a commitment to, as an institution or a church. So there are 3 levels of the declaration. You can start it at Acorn level, where you make a commitment to start investing in climate solutions in the next couple of years, and adapting your investment policy to show that it reflects that desire, all the way through to sapling, where you've already started making and communicating these sorts of impact investments, up to the oak tree level, where churches or institutions have already invested at least 5% of their assets into climate solutions and are sort of committing to increase that. So it's a, like I say, joint initiative, ecumenical, any church can be part of it, and it's just part of building that movement and showing how, as churches, we can come together and speak up and call for greater action in this area and lead by example by showing that we're starting to do the same and to move our money into these areas. It doesn't give you any sort of financial advice as to where you might make these investments, but we do signpost to different places where you might look for further information. And many churches already do have investments with faith-based trusts or fund managers. So there's opportunities there to speak with them and to encourage them to increase the funds and the makeup of their funds to include more climate solutions. So there's yeah, I'd encourage you to have a little look at the website, which is up on the screen there. It's operationnoah.org/investment, and you can find out more, and we'd be very happy to talk you through it.
Great. Thanks so much, Claire. And thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar today. Thanks for all your engagement. If you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. We'll continue this lunchtime webinar series next month on the 26th of June, looking at empowerment and equity, governance, work and economic justice. Please join us then, and we'll have a guest presentation from Mopo Energy, who are providing battery power energy in other parts of Africa. So we look forward to hearing from their case study as well. So we give thanks again. I don't want to keep you past the hour and really appreciate your joining us today. Thanks.